Welcome to our Line Opinion panelists for the week. We have former State Senator Dee Dee Feldman with us. Merritt Allen of Vox Optima Public Relations. Always great to have Merritt. And it's great to see political psychologist and author Martha Burke back with us. Thank you all for being here. Now we start today with some key developments in a sexual harassment scandal surrounding District 15 State Senator Daniel Ivey Soto. This week, Mr. Ivey Soto announced an investigation into allegations of sexual harassment against him had been indefinitely suspended with no further action to be taken. However, a document published Thursday by the Santa Fe Reporter shows an investigation by a special counsel found probable cause to indicate that Mr. Ivey Soto violated anti-harassment policies in 2 of 3 reported incidents. But there's another twist. Mr. Ivey Soto now claims he received a call at the direction of Senate President Pro Tem Mimi Stewart, advising him to resign as chair of the Senate Rules Committee, or the document would be leaked. He reported that call to the FBI, alleging attempted extortion. Now, there are a lot of questions to be answered, but let's start with this investigation. If there was probable cause in 2 instances, Martha Burke, why would the 4-person Senate panel in charge of the investigation drop it like Mr. Ivey Soto claims?
It's hard to know, Gene, but if you look at the makeup of the group, it's possible that they just couldn't agree. There may have been 1 person that held out. There may have been 2, probably no more than that. But if they couldn't agree and they weren't willing to say he's guilty or he's not guilty, they just said, let's just take a dive on this one, which was not very courageous. But it may turn out to benefit him because he's mischaracterizing it. You know, he's pretending like, you know, this old term, completely exonerated. Well, that's not the case. They're just not going to comment anymore.
Yeah. By the way, we should, Source New Mexico reached out to the lawmakers, Senator Linda Lopez here in Albuquerque, of course, Senator Benishendo Hemis, Senator Crystal Diamond, Deming, and Pat Woods, of course, from Broadview. All of them refused to comment or did not return calls. Merritt, we talked about this situation on the program 7 months ago when it started. A female lobbyist claims Mr. Ivey Soto harassed her multiple times and groped her. She also claims the senator blocked voting rights policy she was pushing because she'd rejected his sexual advances. There were calls for his resignation then, and nothing happened. It's a long time ago. Should the governor step in if his peers won't take any action here?
Well, I think a lot of the silence is interesting. I think the silence from the governor is interesting, who was certainly willing to speak out over Senator Padilla, Michael Padilla, several years ago, and basically shut down his lieutenant gubernatorial bid. I think the silence from the Republican Party of New Mexico is surprising, who are generally willing to jump on any hint of a scandal from the opposition. And I'm frankly disappointed that my fellow Republicans aren't willing to speak out on the topic of sexual harassment. And as you may remember, I did not interview Mariana Anaya, who was unable to speak out after she filed her formal complaint due to confidentiality requirements. But I interviewed 3 of Ivey Soto's accusers from the lobbying groups who wrote an open letter in follow-up to Mariana Anaya's open letter, accusing him of 8 more counts of harassment or sexual harassment. Wow. I interviewed them for 2 hours on live radio on KKOB, and I've also conducted a number of sexual harassment investigations on active duty in the Navy to find probable cause to take further action in my professional life. And I was stunned at what these women told me and what they were willing to share in live media. So certainly I read the leaked report from the special counsel brought in by the Legislative Ethics Committee. He did find probable cause for 2 of the sexual harassment complaints. He did not find probable cause for one of just the harassment, for the 1 harassment complaint. I feel that reading from the reporting from the Santa Fe Reporter and some statements from an interview with Senator Stewart, it appears that there may have been a tie vote from the 4-person investigative subcommittee. And that's why it didn't go forward. And my guess is it might have gone along partisan lines. That's just That's just a guess because this is still politics.
Yep.
And
Yes.
that's politics are still in play here. What I find very interesting is we see gaps in the policy. Mariana Anaya is not allowed to speak out. She filed a lawsuit so that she is able to overturn this gag order and describe from her perspective what has happened in this process, because right now the only person who can say anything is Senator Ivy Soto.
Right.
And he is certainly taking control of the narrative as best he can, although this narrative is turning bizarre, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Martha Burke, let me ask you about that, this idea that Mr. Ivy Soto's accusers, they can't speak about this situation because of that confidentiality requirement. Do we have a problem here with that requirement?
We've got a big problem, Gene, because the accuser cannot speak out, but the accused can get out there and blab all he wants to.
Right.
And that is the most one-sided situation that I can flatly imagine. I have taken the liberty of sort of consolidating his defense. He wrote this big op-ed, which I know we're going to get into in a minute, but it boils down to this. He says, I didn't do it, but if I did it, it's because my mother was born in Cuba. I suffered child abuse, and I can't hear very well.
Right.
I just wonder if he wears a hearing aid.
I've been profoundly deaf since the age of 28, and I'm now 52, and I've managed to not be accused of sexual harassment. I would just like to put that on the record.
Martha, while I get you here for a quick second, though, I do want to get your opinion about what Pro Tem Mimi Stewart had to say about this, or the accusations about her. Any sense of that? That's a fairly heavy charge.
Well, I agree. It is a heavy charge, and she may have felt like, as many other people do, it's time for a heavy charge. I mean, we've got so much confusion here. As Merritt said, probably the committee deadlocked, so they didn't do anything. We've got the he can talk and she can't issue. And it's a really hairy ball of wax, so to speak, to use an outdated term. And so I think a heavy accusation may be appropriate at this time.
Yeah, interesting point there. Senator, I'm still pretty amazed at the timing of this whole thing. Mr. Ivy Soto says the Santa Fe Reporter published the leaked report about an hour after he filed his report with the FBI. And if true, the timing there isn't great optically, as they say. I mean, is this as serious as the senator would have us believe? I mean, I just don't.
No,
Okay.
I think these kinds of leaks are what happens when you don't have a transparent process. This process is clouded in secrecy. It's it's flawed in so many ways that it is hard to count. But I'm really glad that document was leaked, and I really encourage people to read that document because it is eye-opening. And to Merritt's point as to why there's been such silence from many sides on this, I think there are some people out there that are afraid of Daniel Ivy Soto and don't want to tangle with him because he does things like go to the FBI and make all kinds of harsh statements that people are frankly, he's intimidating. And I must give a disclaimer because one of the women that Merritt interviewed, who also signed one of the 8 more complaints lodged against the senator, was the executive director at Common Cause. And you have to remember that these women come forth at some risk to their reputations,
right,
to their bills, to their own safety. And so I really encourage people to read that report. It includes not just information about the exact accusations from Mariana Anaya, but several other instances of alleged sexual harassment witnessed by other senators and representatives,
right,
that I think are relevant here. and certainly relevant when it comes to the reputation of the Senate. And the reputation of the Senate is really at stake here. And unless there is some sort of fix to this flawed process, or unless they do something, send a signal to the public that this kind of behavior is not acceptable, and expulsion is only one of the remedies that they have, I think there's going to be a real loss of public confidence in the New Mexico Senate.
Right.
And that's going to spill over into political races that are happening in November.
That's right.
And it's going to have some really long-range implications. So I think that there are two members of the Legislative Ethics Committee which have proposed a fix to the possible problem of a tie vote on that subcommittee. And that's going to be considered by the Legislative Council Committee on Monday. So tune in for that hearing. I think that should be interesting. But first of all, why are the senators themselves judging themselves?
Right.
Why isn't there an independent
Yep.
body, the Ethics Commission, which we struggled to set up? Why don't they have a role in this, rather than having the other chickens, the other hens in the House deciding which one should be thrown out or not thrown out? And remember, when you're a senator, you want the vote of the person that may be exonerated.
Right.
So you're afraid to vote against that person.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a few problems.
I thank you so much, Senator, for that. That's insight we couldn't have gotten anywhere else, and I very much appreciate that. I'm very unclear where this is all going to head. I appreciate your point again about political season is upon us. Anybody can make anything of anything if they want to. But first things first, we got to fix this process where the accuser is held silent and the accused can just say whatever they want. Something right there just has to change. It's a little bit nutty, as they say. All right, thanks to our Line Opinion panel for that discussion for sure. We'll be back here at the virtual roundtable in less than 10 minutes to talk about Republican nominee for governor Mark Ronchetti's call for a referendum on abortion.